that I talk about. I could maybe another time we can go with specifics. And then also another type of sexual abuse is marital rape. A lot of people think, oh, the person's married, no married person cannot be raped, but there could be rape within the marriage, and that's called marital rape. It is illegal in Texas. And many people have a misconception on how someone could rape their spouse. They're like, but what do you mean? How could someone rape their spouse? It doesn't make any sense. Remember, even if you're married, you have to give consent, for you to have sex. Just because you're married doesn't mean, okay, you do whatever you want with me at any time. That's not what marriage is. There's boundaries even in marriage. And that's something important to remember. And so sometimes people, coerce the other one to take maybe in part, maybe to do things that the other person doesn't feel comfortable with. So that's why it's very important, even in your marriage, to say, this is what I'm comfortable with, this is what I'm not comfortable with, and your spouse should respect that, and if they don't, then that's a big red flag, and that's something important. Even in a marriage, there's boundaries. For example, I'm married. I've been married for almost 10 years. And, there's boundaries in our marriage. There's things that, my husband knows that I won't do, and that he, and that we talk about, and so that's important. That's very important, because I have seen clients that they come to me and they're maybe not, they're not SDA, but some of them are Christian, and they say, oh, can you just help me to be able to just accept my husband, because he has another person, he's having an affair, but he doesn't want to stop. So I just want to be able to be okay with that. Well, personally speaking, I'm not going to help someone be okay with that, because first of all, it's wrong. And second of all, it's damaging that person emotionally. I mean, and this particular person, I mean, she even did things with her husband that she never wanted to do, and that her husband will coerce her to do. But she thought, well, if I don't do this, then my husband's going to leave me. So then she would do things, sexually, that she didn't want to do, just so she could continue with the marriage. But again, that's abuse. And that also, when there's sexual abuse, it really affects you spiritually as well. So that's something also to keep in mind. There's some, I know that maybe most of you, I'm assuming, most of you or all of you do not use drugs or alcohol, but sometimes there's people who put certain things in your drink. So it's very important whenever you go out, not to get anything that's already opened, or someone's like, oh, here, I bought you soda, or, or anything. It's important for you not to take anything that is open. And this is something that I always heard since I was a little girl from my parents, no, don't take anything, don't take any open drinks. And so I would always follow that. But there's, sometimes alcohol is the number one substance followed that people use when there's a sexual abuse, sometimes followed by I don't know if I could say this correctly, but it's Robnol. It's a type of drug, and then also the GHB. A lot of people use these drugs to put it in people's drinks, and then you don't know what happens. So I had this little girl, for example. Well, she wasn't a little girl; she was a teenager, someone that I saw in the hospital, and she, she was a good girl. She wouldn't do drugs, she wouldn't drink, but she went to this party with her friends. Someone gave her something to drink, and I think she was drinking Sprite, and someone put something in her drink. So then the next thing she remembers, she wakes up, she's in this room, her pantyhose and her shoes are off, and so she doesn't know what happened, so then, long story short, she was raped, but she didn't remember who raped her or what happened, and because, again, somebody put something in her drink. And the person, it creates a lot of confusion. Some of these drugs that people put in their drinks to rape others, you're very confused. You don't really remember anything or what happened. You have memory loss, so you don't know who the perpetrator is, who the person is, and you don't know if there's anybody there, if anybody took pictures or what happened. So it's pretty scary. It's also scary when you're awake and you know what's happening, but it's also scary when you don't know what happened to you. So some people do use to put stuff in their drinks or in their food. So you be really careful with that. That's something that's very careful, even if it's someone that you trust. It's just always good to be cautious. And like I said, also going back to the males, males can also be abused, and they're often, for men, it's more likely that it's going to be a stranger who does the abuse. Or a rape, and it happens more often like in cars or outdoors, not like females. A lot of times in movies you see, there's a white van and the van got the girl and put her in the van and they sexually assaulted her. That happens, but it doesn't happen that often. That's more likely to happen to like a male, than to a female, because for a female, they usually sometimes use other tactics, but and it's a lot of the times, for men, some people are say, oh, don't say anything, or if for example, I've even known people who have been they were molested or touched by an older female and they were teenage boys, so then they're like, well, I don't want to say anything because people are going to be like, oh, why is he saying something? It's actually someone who's older than him actually wanted to do this, but again, that's abuse. So a lot of teenage boys or boys or even young adults, they don't say anything because they feel like, well, it's embarrassing to say that this happened to me. But it does happen. And a lot of people think, oh, okay, only males who are gay do this to other males. Well, that's a myth. It's heterosexual people. And sometimes if you're a male and you get sexually abused, sometimes they question their sexuality. They're like, well, why did this happen to me? And us physically, males and females, physically, even if it's something that you don't want to happen, your body physically reacts to something. Okay, so it's just like if you get punched, te va a salir sangre. Or let's say you get cut physically, even if you don't want it or not, you're going to bleed. You're going to bleed from wherever cut it is. So it's just the same thing. When someone's being sexually abused, sometimes your body physically reacts. And so the person thinks, why did my body react to this if this wasn't something good for me? It's just physically your body just reacts to different things. It doesn't mean that you felt pleasure or anything like that. And so a lot of men, they question their sexuality, if they were sexually abused, or, I know adults who I do counseling with that were sexually abused as kids. And so they'll have those questions, they're like, some of them do, some of them don't. But a lot of times people question that. But like I said before, it's an abuse on the mind and the body. And there's a lot of other things that I could talk about. But like I said, I just wanted to briefly give you an example of the different types of sexual abuse. Like I said, there's different ones. So those are just some of the different types. I don't know if there's something in specific. I guess I can talk a little bit about the myths right now. I'll just talk a little bit about the myths. So we could do that. Let me see. I think I have a little bit here. And also another thing, especially dealing with church, a lot of people, even though they're are leaders in church, sometimes they don't know what to say, or they might say the wrong thing when it comes to sexual abuse. So in case you ever talk to someone or you ever hear someone and they said, some people blame the victim. So it's important to remember that that it's not your fault. If something happens, it's not your fault. And that's something important for us to remember. And that's why it's important for our leaders to get educated in these topics, so they could be able to help others instead of hurting them in a different way, emotionally, because of the comments that they say. So if somebody ever comes up to you and tells you something, If you don't know what to say because you don't know, dealing with sexual assault or sexual abuse, it's better just to stay quiet than to say something that might hurt that person. You know, because we could hurt them spiritually, or maybe, you know, hurt them spiritually, where they feel like, okay, well, I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that because of what that person told me. Because after there's an abuse, you know, sexual abuse, you know, the person feels dirty, they feel unworthy, they feel really bad. You know, some people feel like they don't want to live anymore. So it is important to remember, you know, to pray for them and to lead them to someone that knows about this field, you know, not just any other person, because sometimes they can say, ay, pues habla con el pastor o habla con algo. But what if the pastor doesn't have the knowledge or doesn't have the experience in working with someone who has been sexually abused? And it's important to talk to someone who does, because it could be more harmful than beneficial talking to someone who doesn't know. But one of the, I'm gonna ask some questions and you tell me whether you think it's a myth or it's fact. Okay, me van a decir si es un mito o es un hecho. And I'll say it in Spanish. Personas a menudo concuerdan a la actividad o el trato sexual y al fin cambian. Okay, let's just say it in English. So maybe the person has, let's say they say, oh yes, I want to have sex, and then they say, oh no, I don't anymore, and then they say that they're raped. Is that true or false? You guys can take off your mic so I can hear you. What do you think? Is it true or false?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So the person, people often say, okay, I want to have sex, you know, and then they say, oh no, never mind. And then they say, okay, yes, I do. But and then at the end, they just say, oh, it was rape. I know it's a confusing question. but do you understand what I'm saying? Like someone saying like, oh yes, I want to do this, but then they're like, oh no, never mind, I don't. And then they say, yes, I do. And then at the end, they say, oh, you know what? They raped me. Do you think that happens all the time? True or false?
True.
I think it's true.
Okay, it's actually false.
It's true.
It's actually, you know, sometimes, you know, especially in the news, sometimes they're like, oh, well, you know, women are lying all the time about being raped. And it's usually a 2 to 4% of people who actually, you know, give false information. Usually all of the cases are of someone who, you know, was sexually abused. You know, it's very rare that someone would make something like that up. And like I said, it does happen sometimes, but it's like a minimum of a 2%. So it's important to remember that, you know, if someone comes up to you and say, you know what, so-and-so touched me and so-and-so did this to me, it's important to believe them. It's important to believe them. It's not our job to be investigators, to get all the facts. No, it's our job to believe them and try to be there for them. True or false? Only bad women are raped, but good women, especially Christian women, are never sexually abused. True or false? False.
False.
That's false. It could happen to anyone. It could happen to a young girl. It could happen to a boy, an adult. I've even had, I think my oldest client was in her 80s that she was raped. She was in her 80s. And then you can see as young as 3 years old or younger. I mean, it ranges from everyone in all walks of life. True or false? Or not true or false, but true or false. Rape is a crime, is a spontaneous crime. True or false? Do you think it's something spontaneous or it's something planned? True or is it, what do you think?
I think they planned it maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's planned.
The majority of rapes are planned. So that's why the majority of sexual abuse is by someone that you know, because it's usually planned. True or false? The majority of rapes occur at night in public places.
False?
False.
Yes, that's false. The majority of rapes actually occur in the afternoon in the victim's home or where they work. So, so that's, and let me tell you a story about someone that I was working with, or a client of mine. She was at her house. It was, I forgot how old she was. I was this lady, she was in her home. She was outside in her porch, and some of the neighbors were having a party. And so someone comes in, someone comes into her, tells her something. I think after she went outside for a little bit, and I think she said she was doing something outside in the porch, and then she went back inside, and then someone knocked on her door. She opened the door, and then the person pushed her in, and she actually had a gun. The victim had a gun, and she couldn't use it. A lot of people, we have this thing in us that it's either flight or flight, fight or fight. I don't know if you've heard about it. So sometimes everyone's different. It's just like when you get scared. Some people, when they get scared, they scream. Other people, they don't do anything. They're in shock. Other people just try to hit. Everyone's different when you're in shock. It's the same thing when there's an abuse about to happen. And so with her, it was this person who just came into her door, and then they sexually abused her, and then they left. And for her, it was difficult, because she said, I had a gun like right there in my drawer, and I couldn't even use it. Of course, it was not her fault, but a lot of times when, even if you could be as prepared as you think you are, it could still happen. It could happen to anyone. Okay, true or false? Rapists are people who are dirty, they're old, they're uneducated, they're crazy people who are mostly low income. True or false?
False.
False.
False. Yeah, sometimes you think, like in the movies, this is like this person with a big beard and like all scrubby. You don't picture like a super hot guy, like, oh yeah, well, he can't be a rapist. He's really hot. No, it could be anyone, okay? It could be like the cutest guy in school, the cutest guy in church. It could be anyone. So then we have to be careful. We can't stereotype and say, oh, okay, only people who look this way. Oh, he's okay. Guy every day to church, se pone su traje cada sábado, or this other person, he's fine. No, it could be anyone. So true or false? Rapists, I guess I already said that one. It could be anyone from any religion in any place. True or false? Some victims are asking to be raped by the way they dress.
False.
False. That's false. It doesn't matter if you're outside watering your grass in a bikini. That does not give the right to anyone to come and do anything to your body. Okay, so it doesn't matter what you're wearing or what not to wear. No one has the right to come and abuse anyone. True or false? Studies show that rapists look for only people who are easy targets or more vulnerable. True or false? Studies show that that rapists look for people who are easy targets or vulnerable.
True.
That's true. Yes, that's actually true. Because they, like, for example, if let's say I'm walking home from school and I have a backpack and the backpack's really heavy, and then I'm wearing some shoes that are I don't know, like if I always take that route and I'm always by myself, so that if someone's been watching me, then they're like, oh, okay, well, I know that, she's never pulled out a phone before, or she's always by herself. It seems like she doesn't have any friends. So they try to look for people who are more vulnerable. So then a lot of people are also, maybe people who don't have parents and they live alone. Sometimes they could be more vulnerable because they feel like, okay, if I do something to this person, no one's gonna know, or no one's going to come and do anything. So they do, sometimes they do look for people who are more vulnerable. But like I said, it could be also someone who's like super tough or you know, has a lot of friends. It could happen to anyone. But they do try to find people who are the most vulnerable. True or false, it is not important for kids to have information about sexual abuse. If you talk to kids about sexual abuse, we're just going to scare them. True or false?
I think false. It should be brought up to light. You know, not to prepare them, but so they can have some kind of knowledge. And you know, if anything does happen, they're able to speak up and they're not afraid or, you know, intimidated.
Yes, that's true. That was a myth, because yes, kids should know, you know, and it's important for us to talk to them about, especially their private areas, you know, what you can touch, what people can't touch, and then talk to them and actually tell them what their actual private area's name is. This is your vagina. Do you feel uncomfortable right now? This is his penis. Is that uncomfortable for you? You know why? You know why it's uncomfortable? Because we tend to be like, I know que dijeron, I know, you know, and especially in our culture, say, ay, no te toques el pollito, hijito. El pollito no. What the heck is a pollito? Or you guys are laughing because you know what I'm talking about, right? And so we make it seem like our bodies are, I know, we can't, es algo malo, you know, but in actuality, we need to know what our body parts are, what we have, what we don't have, because especially going into, like I said, to the hospital, when I would see people, the forensic nurse needs to know exactly what happened. You know, she can't put down in her report, she said, you know, that he told her to touch his wee wee. That she can't put that on the report. You know, it seems funny, but you know, it has to be, you know, the anatomy has to be correct in her report, because this is an actual forensic report, and from there they're going to get the information. But there's some people, you know, that the nurse had to keep asking her, you know, okay, so what can you, the nurse can't say, oh, did he touch your vagina? The nurse can't say that, because and then in the report it would seem like, oh, the nurse le dijo que dijera eso, you know. So then when it comes to that, we have to be very careful. And so the nurse just has to keep asking, okay, can you tell me what part? Well, my privates. Okay, what are your privates, you know? And so it is important for us to be comfortable with our own body, because like in these cases, you know, like I said, sometimes the people were uncomfortable even saying the word, you know, but it was important because it had to be written down, because this report is going to go, you know, to law enforcement, and then, you know, to court, and then all of these different things. So it is important for us to feel comfortable with our own body, you know. And so even as when kids are small, you know, we have to teach them, okay, good touch, bad touch, you know, and the appropriate names. So true or false, it's important for kids, okay, to have information about sexual assault for their security. I guess we covered it in that question, you know, it's true. But it is important. And, you know, it's just for us to be able to know, again, to know the difference and not be embarrassed to say this happened to me, you know, to get help. It is important to talk to someone, you know. Don't keep it to yourself. Even if the person threatened you or anything, you know, it's important for you to talk to someone about it. A lot of the times when someone goes through a sexual abuse, you know, there's a spiritual crisis. You know, you don't want to know about God anymore. You know, why did this happen to me? Why did God allow this to happen to me? And so the person sometimes goes into depression or has anxiety because of it, or a lot of people get PTSD when they just feel they get nightmares, or they just feel that everyone's watching them. Some people, of course, get physically ill, like they can get an STI, which is a sexually transmitted infection. You know, some people, you know, you can even get anything, you know, any type of STI. because of it. Some people unfortunately do get pregnant after they're raped. There's a lot of different things that could happen. So it is important to talk to someone about it and to see what could how they could help you when in case something happens. Hopefully nothing like this ever happens to any of you. But it's also just important, to keep vigilant and to, again, even if it's someone that you trust, it could even be a boyfriend that you've had for years, and then it could happen, so it's important if that does happen, for you to talk to someone, and report it. And again, never judge someone else if they come up to you and tell you, oh, this happened to me. Just listen to them and then try to guide them to someone who could help them if you don't know what to do. There's a lot of other things I can talk about, but I know I already went over so much. So do you all have any questions or any comments, anything that you're curious about that that I could ask? That could I answer for you? Or anything that I wasn't clear on that you feel like, oh wait, I didn't understand that. I could clarify. Or if you want to, you can do it through the chat and I could answer it out loud to everyone. If you're embarrassed to say it right now in front of everyone, you can do it through the chat and I can answer the question as you're coming in. Or I don't know, there's something that I missed. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I have a question. So what can we advise our young youth? What can we do to prevent these types of things? Okay, so you said something like to not be alone, right? To not take drinks or unopened drinks from people because you can put some drugs in there, right? That can cause confusion. So what else can we do to protect ourselves? Like pepper spray or
that could be, but I just want to say something before I say about prevention. Honestly, you could be as prepared as you want to be, but sometimes it could still happen. Like I said, I've had people who they've had a gun with them and they were still raped. They've had another person who's like, but I'm a black belt. Like, how could this happen to me? And then they felt, that guiltness, but it's not nothing on their part. Again, sometimes when something like this is happening, your mind and your body just, react in different ways. And sometimes even if you try to fight, sometimes you have to think about survival. So sometimes it's like, if I continue to fight this person, am I going to get killed? And so then that's another question to ask. But some of the things that that we could do is avoid alcohol and drugs. And like I said, not everyone who uses alcohol or drugs gets sexually abused, but it happens too. So then avoiding that, things that we should already know, also always tell someone where you're going, even if you're going out with, someone that that you've known forever, still tell someone, you know what, I'm going to be in this particular place. I should be back at this time. And I know sometimes you feel, because I wasn't a teenager too long ago, so sometimes you're like, oh, I don't want to tell my mom, yeah, cada rato me están hablando, so you're just letting them know, hey, I'm gonna be at this place, I'll be back at this time, or check on me after an hour. It's important, because in case something does happen, there's someone who can go and help you out. And maybe carrying pepper spray, but learn how to use it first. You don't want to get pepper spray on yourself. So then just that could be something good. Another thing to do is, like I said, talking to someone. Try not to be alone with someone that you don't really know, or even if you know them, or for them to, you can say, oh, well, so-and-so is going to come in a couple of minutes, or just kind of, if you feel unsafe already, if you're starting to feel unsafe, it's better for you to leave, leave the situation, leave the place wherever you're at. It's just better to do that. Those are some of the things you could do, but like I said, you could try to avoid some things, but sometimes even if you try everything, it could happen to to anyone, you know. Anyone else have a question? Yes, Anna?
My name is Ruby. I'm using my mom's
Oh,
account.
sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
So if something like that were to happen to us or a friend or somebody we know, the first thing you do is report to the police?
No, well, the first thing you do, it depends. Like, if it's a rape, when there's a rape, just always remember, the first thing you're gonna probably want to do is take a shower and get cleaned. Do not do that, okay? Because then you're washing off evidence. And so don't change your clothes. Don't do that. Call 911, and tell them what happened. And then if there's someone else around there that you can talk to, that would be good. But yeah, if there's sexual, if there's a rape, you can do that. If there's someone says, you know what, a couple of months ago, this happened to me, and if it's a child, like someone under the age of 17, then, it does have to be reported to Child Protective Services, but also, of course, call 911 if it's something that's happening there. And if it's someone that that they come to you and they say, this just happened to me, first we need to make sure that physically they're okay. Are they bleeding from anywhere? Are they okay physically? And then, of course, call 911 so you can get assistance with the police, and then they could do a rape exam. And in the Valley, there's 2 hospitals. Well, I think there is both of them. The one in Mission, actually no, Mission doesn't have one anymore. I think it's just McAllen right now, and probably doctors. I'm not sure is it those, Marisol, do you know? Okay, I know for sure McAllen Medical, and there used to be a ward in Mission, but they removed it last year, so I don't know what other place, but if you call 911, they could direct you to one of the hospitals that has it. Did you have another question?
Yes. And does the church have some kind of program for counseling, or how is that? How do you know who to go to?
Well, if there's a sexual abuse, like I said, there's advocates or counselors, like the way what I used to do. So then when the person goes to the hospital, or even if there's an adult over the age of 18 and they don't want to report it to the police, and that, because you don't have to, if you don't want to, it would be better, so that person they can find that person and they won't do it to other people. But if it's an adult, like say over 18, and they don't want to report it, they can just go and see counseling. There in McAllen, Mujeres Unidas, they have a rape crisis center. So the person could go there and get free counseling. They don't have to pay. And they could help them out with counseling. And also, if the person does report it and they make the police report, then there's something called crime victims compensation, and through there, that program helps them pay for their medical bills, and then also for any counseling or any relocation or anything that they might need because of the incident.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else have any questions? We have like 4 minutes left. Go ahead.
Okay, so for example, let's say that I have a friend, and she got raped, but she doesn't want to tell her family, or she doesn't want to tell anybody, or she doesn't want to report it. What can I do in that situation?
Well, for that, you can tell her to try to seek counseling, because it is important, because it's something that changes your life forever. This person is they violated you, so you've been violated, and that's really tough. So maybe just encouraging them to seek counseling, and then you can't force them to report. That's going to be up to them, but if they are minors, and if they've told you, it's important for an adult to know, because again, one, that person could be doing it to other people, or who knows how many people they've done it to or going to do it to, or they could also, hurt them physically. So if it's a minor, it is important to report that, or to encourage also them to report it to Child Protective Services. Anyone else have a question? So remember, whenever it's someone under the age of 17, it does have to be reported, because that's child abuse. So there's a difference. There's child abuse, and then there's also if you're already 18, it's still it's rape, but it's not considered child abuse. It's just considered rape or sexual abuse. I don't know if I answered your question. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Is this like a myth or fact, or I don't know? Do rapers give like red flags, or how, like your clients, your patients, have they told you? I don't know, like, or does just come, I guess my question is, does this just come out of nowhere? Like, because they're usually their friends or their family. Do they have reports of having red flags in the past, or it just happened out of the blue?
Well, not really. It's just, it could be any type of person, It's just like someone with like, for example, domestic violence. People are always like, why? How could they have killed that person? Si eran tan buenos, se portaban muy bien, they were so friendly. Because you're seeing one thing, but and then you don't really know what's internally. It's just like what the Bible says. People see the outside, but we don't see the heart. It's the same thing. So it could be, I've had people come with me for counseling that, the person who abused them was like an elder in their church, and the person was a friendly person, so there's no characteristic, okay, it's this, and this. There's no characteristic. But more with domestic violence, there is a little bit more, but that the person sees in the home, but not maybe the outside people. But for rape, it could be someone from any type of person. I think we only have 1 minute left. So is there any other questions? Okay. Well, if you guys want, we can have another topic at another time. Just let Marisol know if you're interested. And it was good to meet you all. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of topics. Like I said, maybe we could talk about, dating and boundaries. That's important, as Christian women, to have, our boundaries, and just the different things that happen in dating, especially nowadays that, everything and everywhere you look, it's so sexualized, and we're kind of forgetting what, the principles of the Bible are. So those are important for us to have as for you all to have as young women, and don't be afraid to say no. Because I'm never going to have a boyfriend again if I say no. If the person really cares for you and values you, they're going to respect you. So so just remember that.
Liz, thank you so much.